I've just been reminded, or perhaps told for the first time, I'm sufficiently demented not to know which, that I'm chairing the afternoon session. And I'll probably give you a quick demonstration of failing fast. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch and found this morning's presentations entertaining. Hopefully the afternoon sessions will continue. I don't know if anybody will be able to match the magic trick, but we'll have to see. I think quite an act to follow, really. Our first speaker this afternoon is Alan Kenny from NHS Innovation South East, who's going to talk to us about the Healthy Apps Roadmap.
Roadmap, yeah.
We love a roadmap.
Yeah, well, so as long as we don't have a car crash on the way, it'll be okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have an easy job because what I'm going to do now is kind of put what you saw this morning and what you're going to see later on this afternoon into kind of perspective. So it's a roadmap. How do we get from the idea to the actual app? Okay, and there are pitfalls on the way. Hopefully we'll give you the guidance. Our sat-nav will help you not to crash. Okay. The thing is that there's three possible ways to go here. Dead end. You start off with you think it's a great idea. Is it going to go anywhere? Has somebody else done it before? Are you going to end up going down that hard road that takes you off into the wilderness and you never get anywhere, trying to persuade people for the rest of your life that this is the best idea ever? Nobody takes it up. Or will you get onto great app way and you get your app out there and everything's cool and you make your millions? Of course, you're not going to make millions out of a medical app, even if everybody buys it. But we'll see how we go. Okay, so we have 6 stages, and I have quite simplified this. You've got quite a bit of detail this morning, and there's more than one route through this from stage 1 to stage 6, but I'm just keeping it simple for the moment, and we'll add the complication later on. So we're going to go from pre-development. Let's start looking at our idea before we start committing resources, then committing resources to design and development, then getting a proper review. These apps don't exist in isolation. Who's the user? Who's paying for it? All of those people, they want to have a say in how it goes, or if you've any sense, they should have a say in how it goes. And then, if you need to, medical device registration, as we heard about this morning, and then, if you're extremely lucky, we get onto deployment. Okay. Stage 1, pre-development. We're going from pre-development to design. We want to get there, but there's 2 stage gates on the way. There's 2 possibilities here where you could actually decide to give up the ghost completely. If you get to one of those stages, you really should. Don't continue to flog a dead horse. First of all, needs assessment. What does the app do? What are you going to achieve with this app, and do you really need an app? And I think that last one there, do you really need an app, is very important, because I think that people get this idea, an app is going to solve all my problems. It may be that you just need a spreadsheet, and you don't need to go down that whole big road of creating an app. So be very careful that you really do need an app. Or as Steve was telling us this morning, there's different ways of getting your information. Yes, you can call it an app. I think Ewan was talking about that as well. You can call it an app, but is it really the kind of thing you need to deliver to a smartphone over iTunes, or is there another simpler way to achieve your goals? So you know what your goals are, how are you going to achieve them, and do you really need an app? Okay, this is, again, one of the simplest things, competition. Has somebody already got the app? Sometimes people, inventors, they have, as we call them, inventors. Anybody who comes to us with an idea, they're an inventor. You get the bit between your teeth you don't ever want to let go. This is my idea, it's the best thing ever. So let's bring it forward. Okay, but you know, somebody else is already doing it. It's a wheel that goes around and makes the car go. And you don't really need to reinvent them, especially if it's got 6 sides on it. Okay? So if you do find competition and there is an app similar to yours, why is your app better? If it's not better, then what's the point in going ahead? If there's no competition, as was brought up this morning, maybe it's because it's a stupid idea. Well, we all hope it's not a stupid idea, but be very careful that you're not going down a road well travelled, that there's no point in actually going ahead. So there's our first stage gate. Okay, so this is not just on the competition, but the needs assessment. So you've got to make sure you've got a need and it's not already being fulfilled, and that it's worth going down the app road. And if you've got to go, that's great. Okay? So now you've decided, yes, I need an app, I'm going to do an app. So who are the stakeholders? You've got to know who the stakeholders and the target audience are. Who's going to use this app? Who's going to benefit from this app? It's not necessarily going to be the same people. And also, big in the stakeholders is whoever's going to pay or commit all these resources. And what do they want from it? So it's not just what you want, it's not just what the patient wants, but what all the stakeholders need. Do you need to get patients involved at this stage? It can be, I had a chat over lunch about that. Who is the end user? It may be that the patient will benefit, but actually the patient never sees the app because it's so transparent, because care should actually be more efficient, and they shouldn't even see that the app exists. So that, you know, may mean that actually it's the clinician is the end user, but you still may need to involve the patient to make sure, is it making a difference? So make sure all your stakeholders are identified and that you're fulfilling their needs as well. Okay, now you've got through that. Yeah, everybody still wants to do an app. How much is it going to cost? Who's going to do it? You're going to do it yourself, or you're going to use a contractor? When you go out to a contractor, you're going to find, how much? So you've got to get all of this down on a bit of paper, or maybe you're going to get it down on your smartphone and add it all up. Is it going to be a collaboration? Maybe you can't do it yourself. Maybe actually you meet a friendly developer and say, you know, we could work together and we could get this out. Or you may even decide to, I've got a great idea, but I can't really go on, so you could license it to somebody, but we're not going down that road at the moment. Then just be very careful, particularly in the NHS. Is there a procurement process? I've seen a lot of people do this. They've gone out and they said got a developer on board, they've got a price, the whole lot, and all of a sudden, slap, you didn't go through procurement. Now you have to go right back to the start again and maybe even put it out to tender. That can be soul destroying. So just make sure you've got all those ducks in a row before you move on. Right, now you know what your costs are, business case. Those stakeholders, they want to know how much it's going to cost, and is there going to be a return on investment. So how much am I going to spend, and am I going to get good benefits for that? I've seen a lot of projects like that. They are a great idea, but the amount of money that's going to cost to realise them is going to be much more than the savings that will be made. Okay? It's a different case when you're talking if it's going to save lives. That's another benefit that it is almost impossible to put a monetary benefit on, but actually it's a very overriding benefit. So you do need your business case. You do need to persuade all your stakeholders that this is a great idea. And if you don't, you won't get the cash, so you won't be going on anyway. Okay? So you've done that. Now, this is the second go, no go. If you can't make the business case, if you can't persuade the people who are going to pay, nothing's going to happen. So make sure you do that very well. We're presuming here that all the other ducks are in a row, that you have the need, there's no competition, everybody wants it, the costs are good, but you have to make a good business case. Don't think that the business case will make itself. You have to do it yourself. Okay, now we're on to stage 2, design. So we're going now from design and development, and we want to get into testing. So there's a lot goes on at this stage. This is where the real nitty-gritty and the real work starts, and then people start to get fed up because it's taking too long. I love the idea of developing an app over a weekend and testing it on Monday morning. I'd love to be able to do that. So these are just things that you want to consider as you start to develop your app. What are the user requirements, the system requirements, and do some wireframe development. So start to work it up. It's I like to think in terms of a thought experiment, Einstein's famous way of evaluating things. So work through it in your mind first, then start getting it down on paper, and then start making some models. But think about all these things on the way, what the hardware you're going to use, the functionality needed. Are you going to use data? Where's the data come from? That goes back to stakeholders as well. If you're going to need something from somebody, are they happy to supply it? And interfaces, is there a supporting website? All of this, make sure you consider all of this in your design stage so that you don't end up having to go back to the beginning again because you forgot something. Next, you want to do some systems integration and testing. You want to make sure that this is a good value proposition. Again, some of these things, you'll see them come up again and again, but value and usability, I think, are two words you should have in your mind all the way through this process. You want to make sure that your stakeholders get value, and you also want to make sure that your end user is able to use this app. So I like that, as Ewan was saying, why do we like these? They're stroke. We love them. We want to take them to our hearts. So you really want your end users to do that if you want a successful app, okay? In there, very importantly, is your IP strategy. Who owns the rights to this? And it gets fraught with complications when you have software developers and people who own the idea, because when somebody writes software code, they automatically create copyright in that code, and that belongs to the software developer. So you own the idea, software developer owns the code. Who really owns it? We sort that out with an agreement. Before we start any development, we put an agreement in place that says, we own this, you own that, everything's tickety-boo. Be very careful to make sure that you get that sorted out as well. You don't want to end up in a situation where you thought that you owned something, but then you can't use it because somebody else owns it and they want to sell it somewhere else. So be careful. And sustainability, the last thing there. You want this to go on and on. You don't want to end up creating an app that you spend 50 grand on, that you put out on the street, and then 6 months later it's dead because you forgot that you actually have to have the money to maintain it. Right, now, medical device, whereas it's not ugly head. I don't think it's an ugly head. I think that this is very, very important. I think there's too many apps out there that are unregulated. So you don't know, should I use it, should I not? If it was registered as a medical device, then you could be pretty sure that it's usable. It's CE mark. It's got all the bits and ducks in a row. Just here to remind you that a medical device includes any software, and I've cut this down to take all the difficult bits out of it. But if it's intended by the manufacturer to be used for human beings for the purpose of diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or alleviation of diseases. So pretty much, if you've got a medical app, the software will probably fall into a medical device. And that was explained in more detail this morning. There are cases where it's not going to be a medical device, where it doesn't actually provide diagnosis, or it doesn't make a recommendation that's going to directly affect the patient. In that case, you can forget about it and move on. Okay, then having all of those considerations, that's when you should really get into code generation. In effect, you will probably start the code generation from the beginning, but you'll weave all of those other functions into it to make sure that you get it done on time, but that all these considerations are taken into account by the software programmers. Okay. So again, is you're going to be an internal contractor collaboration. What are you going to do? MHRA registration. If you do need to register as a medical app, you do need to know that before you start, because your developers are going to want to go through a process of certification that has to start with the beginning of the programming. And so are you going to find a developer that knows how to do that, or are you going to employ a consultant? Unfortunately, these things add cost, but in the end of the day, you want to make sure you get those things right, because you don't want to get to the end of the process and still not have a usable app. Okay, so all of these in a row, we get on to testing. So what we want to do now is go from user testing to the stakeholder review. And the stakeholder review will be more or less involve clinical testing. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is refine your prototype. So here you've done your coding, you get it out there. Work on your prototype, make sure everything is tickety-boo. Again, this word usability, really concentrate on that. Make sure your end user will be able to quite easily use this. Your app is supposed to make things better, not make things worse. Again, consider the performance, hardware, data flow, and whatever the particular needs are of your app. So once you get that right, when it's complete, if you found problems, well, it's back to stage 2. You might have to start the design process again, or go through a few more loops before you come back. And if there's no issues, then off you go to stage 4, and you're ready to go for stakeholder review. So we want to get now from the stakeholder review to the motorway, stage 6 deployment. Now there's two decisions to be made here, or two stage gates. These aren't go, no go this time, thankfully. These are just, you may have to go around the process a couple of times. You've got your stakeholder review, and this is where you'll be looking at clinical safety, possibly a mini trial. If it warrants it, it might be a full-scale clinical trial. That will really depend on the nature of the app. If it's a major, I've one coming up, and it's quite an involved decision-making process with a number of algorithms that should help less experienced clinicians to make a decision without having to involve a more senior person. We will going to have to trial that to death to make sure that it's 100% in compliance with what the senior clinician would recommend, and hopefully we'll get that. So, is it past the review? If it doesn't pass the review, you're back again to stage 2, okay? If it does pass the review, what you've got to do now is consider, is it a medical device? Now I know I'm putting that in here, and I did say you really do have to consider this idea of a medical device from the word go, okay? But at this stage you're going to have to decide if you need to register it or not, okay? And if you do, off you go to stage 5. We'll talk about that in a minute. If no, then you're off on the road to deployment, okay? So, registration of a medical device. Okay, you've got your new idea. Is it a medical device? Okay, that's where you're going to have to decide that. So that's at the very, very beginning. If it's not a medical device, then you're okay. You can keep going. Again, I've just stuck this in. If it is a medical device, then you're going to have to take all those steps to make sure that you get it registered properly. Okay. If yes, then is it placed on the market? Tony was referring to this morning, and I think it's still a grey area. But if your app is for research purposes only, then and Rob confirmed this morning that it's not a medical device, and they won't consider it needs to be registered. Okay, but then there was the point. Well, what if they're just putting the sign on to say it's for research, but you do intend it to be used? Now, there is the question that if you develop an app in-house and you don't intend to place it on the market, okay? Now, placing it on the market is basically to deploy it outside of your own organisation. That doesn't necessarily mean that anybody else to pay for it. It could be placed outside of your organisation as a free app, but it's still on the market. Okay, but that again is it's untested. There's no case law. There's no background. So I think it's an area where if you are going to play that card, do consider it very carefully, and I would say take legal advice. Okay, so again, if it's not placed on the market, the NDD doesn't apply. But here's the thing: if you are going to place it on the market sometime in the future, then it does apply. Okay, so if you're going to develop an app and you're never going to put it outside your own organisation, that's fine. But if you do intend at some stage in the future, we might, if it works out, then we'll consider selling it to somebody else. It's a medical device, okay? I don't know how anybody reads your mind and decides when you made that decision, but I suppose we all have email trails and lots of digital evidence these days. Okay. If it is a medical device, then you've got to go through the regulatory process. I'm not going to go through that now, as that was done this morning, but just to show you there, you have to be very mindful of this, and you have to be mindful of this quite early. The idea is we want people to make apps, and we don't want them to fall into the pitfalls. Okay. So the next thing is deployment. Now I don't. Again, this job is easy for me because actually Tony is going to talk quite a bit about this after me. So, what way are you going to deploy your app? Is it an app stores, iTunes, Google Play? Is it going to be an in-house or an there's an idea that's pretty good. When you use a mobile device management system, I think you have it here at Maidstone Tunbridge Wells. So basically, you have your own app store with rules. So the devices are registered with the management system. You can then deploy the app and decide who can use it and where they can use it. So it can be if you go outside a certain geographical boundary outside the trust that the app won't work anymore. That's a good one for devices that are applications that are security conscious. Okay. So, are you just going to stick it on a card and give it to people? Is that the way consider how you're going to deploy this? Or again, something like the NHS England App Store. And what they do is they take apps that are on the market and they make sure that they're of sufficient quality and usability, and then they put them on their app store, and in doing so they are recommending them for use, and they're mostly healthcare apps for members of the public. Okay. Now, are you going to give it out as a paid or free app? How are you going to make money, or are you not interested in making money? Again, if it's just a local deployment, that's more likely that it's a saving that's driving this rather than income generation. Are you going to have something like in-app purchasing or advertising? Is that your model for making money? You have to consider all of these, and I put it there as lanes on a motorway because you can weave and duck and dive between all of those different models, or you can mix them up sometimes. But my colleague Tony is going to talk about that later on. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks. Anybody got any quick questions?
That either means it was all very clear or nobody understood.
It's good to see some common themes emerging across the presentations, really.
Yeah.
And I think next we have Tony Hill, who's going to talk about commercialising the healthy app